G'day! Welcome back to the Super Freak podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Today I'm going to tell you a really embarrassing story. It's going to be great. And we're going to talk about a topic that is really close to my heart. Okay, so the thing that I really believe in my life is that, I don't know if it's having a background as an interior designer that maybe impacts this, but it's that things behind the scenes should be as beautiful, if they are beautiful, as they are front of house or front of stage. So I'm a big fan of like cleaning out cupboards and having serenity inside your, the junk drawer. I don't have a junk drawer. I don't believe in a junk drawer. And there are lots of things you can do to put systems in place for that. However, this is not about me being the most smug person on earth. This is about a really embarrassing story. And the embarrassing story is that a few years ago, I said to my online business manager, do you know that I'm actually a really organized person? And she just laughed. She was like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? I said, yeah, I'm actually super organized. Like my house is really organized. And we had this big laugh about it because what was happening at work in my business was things were not organized. They were super chaotic. We didn't have the basic things in place, like a place for everything and everything in its place. So things got lost. Things were overlooked. It felt that my business was growing and we didn't have the foundations really set up the way we should have so that it could be strong and hold the scale that we were doing. And we definitely paid for it later. There's always a consequence to not setting up these basic foundations. This is why I'm so embarrassed, because it sounds so simple to tell you this, but once I realized I could apply the same level of clarity and systems to my business that I did at home, everything changed really, really quickly. Now, I've heard people talk about systems before. Obviously, people talk about having systems in your business. I've even taken courses on systems, and we had systems in place in the business. But what I don't hear people talk about very frequently, and it could just be that I have not been open to hearing it, I'm not sure, but I did not hear people talk about very frequently business housekeeping, like things in place that keep the systems going, that keep everything up to date, that keep everything neat. I'm sure people talk about this. I just never heard it, and it never clicked for me until a few years ago. So I want to bring this topic to you because this is a really, really close to my heart topic. The reason why is because over the years, I have seen far too many people become dismayed and overwhelmed and quite frankly, anxious and depressed. And they have really been stressed out because their life feels chaotic or their business feels overwhelming. Like we don't even know where to start. I've been there. I know what it feels like. It can be really, really stressful. And it's the tiny little things not done well in the beginning that don't set a solid foundation for you to deal with the daily things that come up that can be stressful. And over time, like overwhelm builds when it's just tiny, tiny, tiny things that all build up on one another. So if I can explain it like this, let's say you have a really messy filing system and you don't know where to find anything. You've just kind of shoved it all, like, listen, I'm never going to judge you if this is you. You just kind of shoved everything into the one folder and you kind of rely on searching for something. If someone new came into your business, they would have no idea what you've labeled the file, so they'd never be able to find it. And then because that labeling system is not great, you bring in a team member, they have to deal with something new that day, they create something new, but they don't know where to put that thing. So over time, they create lots of things for you to quote unquote help, but they don't know where to put that thing because there's no system in place for basic filing. Over time, you use up a lot of friction, a lot of like extra time. Do you know that I heard something recently that people spend on average over their lifetime, an entire year of their life looking for lost items? Isn't that weird? Like it's only maybe a few minutes here and there. Maybe it's 15 minutes a day for you, in which case you'd spend a lot more than a year of your life looking for lost items. But it's those little micro moments where there's friction. We don't know where to find something. We don't know where to look for something. We don't know what the naming convention of something actually is, that can cause over the long time a lot of lost time. For companies and businesses, this costs them a lot of money because the power that they have inside of their business, the leveraged team power and time that they have, they're paying for people to look for things that could have not been lost in the first place. But if you're a solo business owner or you're a micro business owner and you have a really small team, this costs you even more because everything is often in the business owner's head and not out on paper or in systems. So it was a funny moment with my OBM, because OBM means online business manager, because when we had this conversation, she was just gobsmacked that I was actually really organized at home, because my business, it had built really quickly. We didn't have the strong foundations in place. I had never really made the connection that I could do the same thing I do at home in my work. And it was feeling super chaotic. So I actually have taken a few years now and very quickly, but diligently, redone all of our systems and kind of mapped across what I did at home. Now, if you're listening to this now and you're like, I'm not even organized at home, I feel overwhelmed, I want you to know, again, no judgment, but what I'm going to teach you in this episode is going to really help you with thinking about any area of your life to be able to do regular upkeep. So I want to first also say I'm pretty extreme or out there with the way I like to do things. And when I've spoken with my husband about the way I like to do things, he is so different to me that he finds what I do really overwhelming. So what I want to encourage you to do is, as you listen to this episode, just find what might work for you. If you're an analog person, a piece of paper person, use a piece of paper. If you are a systems person and you like software, use software. Just find your own way of doing the things. So I want to really rehash and reiterate that the importance of this, it goes beyond just feeling smug and feeling like, you're organized and you have free time. These basic foundational things prevent you from feeling overwhelmed later on, because in your business, the basics need to be smooth every single day, not just in business, at home as well. Things will come up that you need to deal with. And when you deal with them, if you have a system or a way of having a place for everything and everything in its place, once you deal with things on the daily, you have more bandwidth and more space to deal with what comes up when your day-to-day is not chaotic. So if your day-to-day is chaotic, when things come up, you'll start to feel resentful, you'll start to feel overwhelmed, you'll start to feel like you don't have the bandwidth to do it. And let's play this out. If you don't have the bandwidth to do it, you're not going to make the clearest decisions, your creativity is affected, your ability to think quickly, to act quickly, to deal with problems that come up or challenges that arise in completing the task that has come up. You can end up putting it off for later. That ends up taking up more bandwidth in your mind. Then if you don't deal with it until later, it's going to sit there and not get done. And then eventually something else will need to be done, but it can't be done until that other thing is done. And you can't do that other thing because there's other things that rely on it. You can see how this becomes a recipe for feeling completely overwhelmed and like there's always so much to do. And like I said, this can lead to some serious repercussions in terms of your mental health and your ability to just kind of switch off and relax and to feel like you've got this, So as much as I really value having a nice, tidy home because it feels good for me, I like my space to be like that, the benefits of having a nice, tidy back end of your business, it makes you money. It's so good for you. All right, so I'm going to give you some ideas and some tips on how to think about this. And there's two ways that I really want you to, I guess there's two layers to it. So the first one is theming your days, thinking about when you're going to do all these tasks. And it's almost like a separate conversation, but I'll dive into it a little bit. You've heard me talk about theming my days on this podcast before, but you might have a couple of days where you do you work in the business and maybe one day a week or 2 days or even 80% of your week where you work on the business. Ideally, there's a lot of on the business work that happens. And you can also utilize a team to do some of these things for you. But I think it's really nice to lay the foundation even for these tasks to happen by asking yourself, when is it going to happen? Who's going to do it? And how will I be reminded or how will I communicate this to myself? So when is it going to happen might be, okay, I'm going to allow 1 day a week, let's say, or 1 morning a week to go over these tasks, to make space for these tasks. Or it might be 1 day a week where I'm going to do the on the business kind of tasks. Who's going to do them? Well, there might be someone on my team who can actually help me do some of the tasks. Some of them is going to be me setting up the tasks in the beginning, and some of them it's going to be someone else doing them, and sometimes it will be me doing them as well. So for example, in my business, I'm the person who does a lot of the finance stuff. I don't have a finance manager in my business. My business is not big enough to have someone do the finance managing for me. Plus, I always believe what Oprah said, which is pay your own bills. I like that. So I do that, and it's a once a week thing for me, and tax time is like no big deal whatsoever because I just hand the paperwork to my agent, my tax agent. Is that what you call them? No, accountant. Oh my gosh. I talk to people all over the world and I get confused about who calls what. In Australia, they're just called an accountant. Okay, so that's an example. And then the where, like where and how am I going to communicate it? So if you're a calendar person, like a hardcore analog person, you might put these tasks, you might have a list. By the way, I've got something for you at the end of this podcast. You might have a list, a checklist of all the things that need to happen every week, every month, etc. And by the end of this podcast, you will have one. And you pop them in your analog calendar. Or what I do is I have a software that my team and I use. It's called Asana, by the way, and it's free. I use another one for my personal life because I don't actually love the look of Asana, but that's just me. But anyway, we use Asana, and I pop these business housekeeping tasks inside of Asana. And so there are regular tasks that kind of come up automatically. So once I've put them in, I just say how often it needs to happen. I put them in, and whoever is doing the task gets notified. So that's the first part, is the who's going to do it, when is it going to happen, and how am I going to communicate that to myself? So if you are in a small business or it's just you, it might be okay. It's going to be me that's doing it. I love my analog calendar. So I'm going to set aside one day a week where I work on my business housekeeping tasks, or once a month or whatever it might be, a couple of hours a week. I'm going to put them in my calendar just manually. Perfect. If you have a small business, I recommend that you use some kind of software. So it might be you and a team member, and you're going to use the software to kind of communicate who does what. And it's going to be on their regular day that they do it and your regular day that you do it. So all sorted. That's part one. You need to know where it's going to be communicated, who's going to do it, and when it's going to happen. Now, the second thing is, it's really important then to map out what are the housekeeping tasks and how do we think about these things. So I'll give you some ideas now. Let's get into it. And at the end, like I said, you can download a list of like a checklist that I've created for you of housekeeping tasks for your business. So again, if you are relatively organized in your business, but you're not organized at home, you might want to think about what might be the ongoing tasks that you do, and you can break them down into seasons or time that you can do at home. And if you're organized at home, I really want to invite you to consider that it's really fun. It's actually really fun to feel like the inside or the back end of your business, i.e. the place you are living every single day at work, is just as beautiful as the front end. So here's how I think about it. This checklist is going to contain time periods within which you may like to actually do these tasks. For example, daily, weekly, monthly, seasonally, bi-yearly, bi-weekly, or yearly even. And I've broken down some ideas for the types of tasks that you might want to do within those time periods. But again, just make it your own. So if it's daily, you're going to have a repeated daily task. This is why I like having task management software, because even though I am an analog girly, I am inherently lazy. I don't want to rewrite something every single day in my diary. But if that's your thing, that's your thing. So there's going to be a task every single day. And then once a week, say on a Friday or a Monday, I might have Money Monday or a weekly review that I do on a Friday just to check back on the week, make sure I've assimilated any lessons that I've learned, things I need to change, things I need to think about. Like every week there's a weekly review that happens on a Friday. So in my calendar, there's actually time mapped out for me to do the things that I know I need to happen every day, the things that need to happen every week, once a month, etc. So let's go through some of the tasks and what they might actually be for you to do on the regular, some business housekeeping tasks. Okay, so number one is daily. Every day I do two main things. Number one is daily admin, And it's not a lot, but I have this task that comes up every day in my software, which I use. My personal one is called Todoist, and I keep that separate to Asana. Like I said, because I don't like the look of Asana, I find it a little bit confusing for my eyes. Really weird, but you've got to find what works for you. In my daily admin tasks, one of the tasks is to kind of do some mindset work or check in with my own vision board or visualization, or, something that gets me tapped into where I'm going and to keep me on track with what my intention is. So that's part of my own daily admin. Other parts of daily admin is I have a task that reminds me to check in with my clients. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, but in my brain as a business owner, when I'm holding all of the things and I'm doing all of the things and I'm very easily distracted, I know it sounds really weird, but some days I can forget that there are things I need to do, like check in with my team, etc., even though it's really important to me. So if I have that on my list and I've woken up and I've been distracted by something else, or something has randomly come up, it's on my list and I actually know whether I have or I haven't checked in with this person or whatever it might be. So on my daily admin list is to check in with my clients, to check in with responses through the software that I use to communicate with my clients. At the very, very, very end of the day is to go through my email. That's like one of the lowest priorities in my life, is to go through email, mostly because I have someone else doing the customer service for me inside of my business, and I find email super distracting. So there are just a few examples of things I like to do on the daily. And I love that I have like an automatic reminder because my brain is empty. I don't mind not having to think about reminding myself to check in with my clients. Also, sometimes I'm traveling while I'm working and I lose track of time. I lose track of the time zone. I lose track of whether I've done something that day. It's just really kind of handy for me to do that. Most often I'm ticking it off because I've already done it. So that's daily admin. Another thing that I do every day is I'm a really big fan of the Getting Things Done system by David Allen. And one thing I love about Todoist as a software is that there's a dedicated section called the inbox. And it's not the inbox where other people comment to you and you're receiving comments. It's the inbox where you kind of brain dump all of your ideas that you think about that you need to do something with later. And you can assign them to different projects, different tasks and whatnot, reminders, etc. So I put everything in the inbox when I think about it. And then at the end of every day, I'll go through that inbox and go, okay, that's a task relating to X project. I'll put that in that project. So I like Todoist for that reason. But one of my daily tasks is to go through that inbox and just move everything out of it that's kind of come up in my brain. So every day I'm kind of doing a bit of a reset. Then at the end of the day, not every day, but on the days that count that I need to, when there's lots going on, I'll actually sit down and plan my time for the following day. But I don't need to do that every day. Okay, so that's daily. Now, weekly, I'll have a finance date. So there's times when I'll be checking over reporting. I will be answering questions from my accountant. Just a little date to kind of check in with everything. What I love about doing this weekly is that I can remember what certain expenses are. If someone's got a question about what was this expense through the business, I know what it is because it was only a week ago. If I do it monthly, I don't know. I got no idea. I have no clue what, and I find that really stressful. So it doesn't take me very long to just upload all my receipts, things like that. And when tax time comes around, it's not a thing whatsoever for me at all. Like I mentioned as well, I do a weekly review every week. And I also check over the projects that we're working on in my team and make sure everyone has everything that they need and that there is time in the week and people are around, etc., to do what we need. Okay, so here are some ideas for monthly. And again, you can download a checklist of this at the bottom of this podcast. And I hope that you will, and I really hope that you like it and you apply it. So monthly, I'll do like a memory clean out on the computers. I only have a couple of computers that I work from, but I also check for upgrades manually. We do reporting like cash flow, revenue, subscriber count in the business. And then we've also got analytics, like looking at analytics. And this is something that I'm always looking at improving as well. Then we have seasonal. So I'm just giving you some examples, but once a season, as in once every couple of months, I'll have someone on my team do a clear out of any subscribers to our email list that are unconfirmed. We often email them and say, hey, did you mean to subscribe? Would you like us to unsubscribe you? We'll do a tidy up of random files in our file storage software, just making sure we archive anything old or superseded, anything that doesn't have a proper naming convention, we name it and put it where it needs to be, because sometimes you'll download something and it'll just sit in the main drive and it needs a home. And then another thing we do seasonally is have a look back over like social media for anything that we've just tested out or posted weekly, look at the analytics, see what's working. Maybe twice a year, we might look at the overall financials of the business in terms of net worth and things like that. And we also look over every opt-in in the business and make sure that all the links are accurate and the copy on the pages still says what we want it to say. For example, yearly, it might be we update all the privacy policies, terms and conditions, copyrights. And then also we have in our business, when we have certain clients in certain years, so for example, if someone signs up for NLP, there'll be a tag applied to that contact that says NLP current year, 2020, whatever. And so we make sure that all the tags are then up to date for the current year. And that typically happens. It's a task that happens in January every year. We also go through and update any copy on the website just to make sure that it's up to date. Yearly, we'll check in with business insurances, make sure we still have the right insurance. So there are some examples of things you can do periodically, let's call it. And like I said, you can find your very own way to apply that. So I hope that you'll download the checklist. Now, there are a couple of other things that I just really want to mention, and that is the automation and backup tasks. Okay, so a task might be to back up all the files on all of your devices. Now, we have automatic backups in my business, like it's automatically happening and automatic software updates. But even still, I still have a monthly task to check in that the backups have actually been done, because sometimes those systems break. And this is another embarrassing story of something that I want to share with you. So one of the tasks that I do recommend that you do as your business housekeeping task is to check over some of the automations that you have set up for every offer, for everything in your business. So here's an example of how we did this really badly. Okay, so in my business, we had this automatic task set up in my business. Well, I thought that we did, that lets us know immediately that someone's payment has been missed. Now, sometimes it happens because like a credit card is out of date or something like that. And what used to happen, or what I thought was happening, was that an automatic task gets sent to my customer service team so they can follow it up immediately and make sure people's card details are up to date. And what happened was the system broke and we didn't have a backup task to just check on the regular basis to make sure that we hadn't missed anything and therefore that the system was still working. So what we learned from that process is now we have an extra task. So not only do we have automatic tasks that go to people to check up on things, we have a backup task that every month we run a report just to make sure we haven't missed any, like there's nothing odd going on with payments and everyone's payment plans are on track and things like that. So ways you can automate things, like you can use software like Zapier, it's called. So for example, when someone signs up to a program, not only do they get added to our software and all that kind of jazz, we have a zap that says when someone signs up for this using this program, add them to this particular spreadsheet. And then we have a list of everyone who is part of the program just so we know, and we have an offline version of everything. So in case the software breaks or something doesn't work correctly, which we have discovered it does happen from time to time, it can actually be really devastating to your systems because you don't even know that something's not working and you're relying on it working and you're trusting that it's working and it's not. So having those tasks, not only for the things to happen on a regular basis, which is where typically people focus when it comes to systems, but the business housekeeping tasks to check in that everything is still working, to check in that everything is still up to date, it actually creates so much space and it frees up so much mind for you to be able to know and trust and relax that everything is kind of working and swimming along lovely. So you've got tasks for cleaning things up, you've got tasks for checking things over, you've got tasks for keeping things up to date. You know when you're going to do it, you know how you're going to communicate it, and you know who's going to do it. And you know maybe what day of the week or what time of the month you're going to do it as well. And that's business housekeeping. The aim, of course, is to keep everything behind the scenes and in the cupboards and under the hood just as beautiful in that space that you live every day and work in your business, just as beautiful as the front end. So you get to have an experience of feeling joy and pride in your work every day. And it's also so beneficial for you and your mental health and your sense of peace and tranquility, which I value so much in business. So I hope this has inspired you and helped you today. Of course, if you'd love to receive the checklist for yourself, just go ahead and download it. It'll be underneath this episode. And remember, everything you want is so much closer than you think. So stay curious, stay open, and I hope to see you soon. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.